At a time when terrorist activity appears to be at its most prevalent, with a number of devastating attacks in recent months, one area that has recently come under the microscope is the maritime industry. It follows an exercise held on the Brittany ferries ship Mont Saint-Michel, during which sea marshals boarded the vessel in the middle of the English Channel and patrolled for the remainder of the journey to Caen. Dryad Maritime is a team committed to leading the way in ensuring the safety of those travelling and working at sea. Its chief operating officer outlined that whilst the threat of an incident at sea is relatively low, preparing for such eventualities is a sensible approach.
We live in a world that is sadly blighted by terrorist actions, and the exercise that took place on the Mont Saint-Michel is an environment that includes mass transportation and therefore lots of people and potentially people in a vulnerable situation, and therefore we need to prepare for that, we need to plan for that, we need to know how to respond to such an incident if it occurs. That said, of course, the probability of it may be very low, but nevertheless we've seen through acts of terrorism in recent times where we never seem to be we continue to be surprised, shall I say, by acts of terrorism and the ways in which they're perpetrated. So it makes absolute sense for us to put in place plans and responses to be ready for such an event should it occur, the hope being that it never gets to that stage in the first place.
Maritime threats that have had direct links to the UK have been extremely rare, with 2 foiled attempts to place vehicle-based bombs on Spain to Britain ferries by the Basque separatist group ETA. But with terrorist atrocities continuing to surprise with their location and style, Ian explained why an exercise of this nature took place at this time.
Given all that's happened with the terrible events in Nice and other places, and the pressure that we know from the open press has been placed upon the French government to respond to this, I don't think it's unusual that we saw a very public demonstration of this. So I think the combination of the high publicity that took place and the timing rather suggests that this is indeed a genuine attempt to show that this capability exists and to practically apply those measures, but at the same time there must be a certain public confidence aspect to it as well.
We approached Brittany Ferries for comment on the exercise, and they responded with this statement. Passengers were informed via announcements in English and French before the exercise took place. Access to outside decks was not allowed at the time of the helicopter's arrival. The security crew travelled with passengers to France, where they left the ship on foot. Security exercises like this one on board Mont Saint-Michel give Brittany Ferries an opportunity to practice its incident response in partnership with other agencies. Safety and security are our highest priority, and we operate according to robust procedures set out in the International Shipping and Port Security Code. With such public displays of security forces testing their capabilities, the risk comes that it could create an increased feeling of worry and fear amongst the general public, something Ian was quick to ease.
Acts of terrorism, maritime terrorism, whilst not unprecedented, are rare by comparison to other forms of terrorism. It's important for us not to suddenly decide not to go on ferries or cruise ships anymore, because there are adequate and appropriate levels of security that are there. That's not to say that something couldn't happen, but we can't say that on our streets. That's why we see armed police deployed onto the streets. That's why we see them on other forms of mass transportation. What is absolutely critical, though, is that we, as we go about our daily lives, that we're not crushed by all of this, but we just make sure that we are vigilant and we do keep an eye open, just like you might do walking down an unfamiliar city street, and that in the event of us seeing something that we think is slightly out of the ordinary, we just make sure that we tell somebody about it. But let's not be crushed by any thoughts of terrorist activity. There are lots of measures in place. There are lots of people looking out for our interests. And I, for one, will continue to go on ferries and cruise ships.
Ben Treppus, for That's Solent.